Welcome to the professional development session about open textbooks. I am Michelle Rubino, and I am co-presenting with Chuck Baker, the English department head. This presentation was created by the Open Education Network. And the Open Education Network is comprised of research universities, community colleges, four-year universities and colleges, statewide systems, consortia, tribal colleges, HBCUs, Hispanic serving institutions, and also institutions in Australia and Canada. Today's agenda, we are going to talk about the problem, talk about what open textbooks are, and then talk about the actions that we can take to help students. So we're going to start here. So we're talking about an issue that is much broader than just textbooks. This is a social justice issue. And when you read this, you might think of people around the world who don't have physical access to higher education. But we are also talking about here in this country, where people who do not have equal access to higher ed due to financial issues. And then as a comparison, here is the college's mission. So it mentions specifically the community and also affordable education. This is from a study done for the US Department of Education. 2.4 million people did not finish college because of the cost in the first decade of this century. The point is we have an access issue here in the US. So more and more, the burden of paying for higher education has shifted from the state to the students. So here we can see a comparison about how state funding has decreased significantly and tuition funding has increased. Here in South Carolina, the difference is exponential. And then just a comparison, take a look at student debt far outstripping credit card debt. It has tripled in just a decade to be over 1.4 million. So now we're going to talk about the impact of students' financial situation on their everyday lives. Food pantries are now becoming ubiquitous as students struggle to afford to live while paying for college. The College and University Food Bank Alliance is an organization of higher ed institutions that run food banks. It started in 2012 with 13 members, and as of September 2019, they have 700 and more members. Students cannot afford textbooks because something else, such as food insecurity, the cost of daycare, or supporting family members, is causing them to not be able to afford the textbooks. Caring Corner is Greenville Tech's campus food pantry that provides emergency food assistance for students and employees. Students can visit the food pantry twice a month and employees once a month. It is supported by employees and students who donate food, toiletries, and diapers for the pantry. So this service at the Caring Corner is emergency-based and not intended to serve as a long-term solution. So it is important to connect our students to the benefits available in our wider community. And Chuck, I'll hand it off to you.
All right, thank you. So now that we have a definition of what the problem is, excuse me, the next thing to ask is, what is it that we can do? So what you see on the screen here is a list of the 5 main categories for student expenses. So of course, the question is, as leaders in the classroom itself, what is it that we can actually do to help solve this problem? And of course, what we'll be talking about today that we can most impact is books and supplies. So while this isn't the highest cost for the affordability issues, oftentimes it's one that has the most impact. and it has a disproportionate impact on the academic success of students as well. So when we look at college textbook prices, textbooks have the cost has increased faster than tuition, faster than healthcare, faster than housing. If we look at this number here, and this is even a couple years old now, not accounting for recent inflation, but the cost of textbooks has increased 1,041% since 1977. Students are often told to budget between $1,240 and $1,440 for books and supplies every single year. What we find out is that they're actually spending more like $415 a year. So it begs the question, why the difference here? When they're asked to budget $1,200 to $1,400, why are they only budgeting possibly a third of that as far as their textbooks and supplies go? If we look at this chart, what we have is a 22-23 School of Arts and Sciences tuition chart, where you can see that for a full-time student, the in-county tuition and fees would be around $24.85. Of course, we have some programs right now with the zero tuition, which helps, but that is not necessarily going to be something that is long-term sustainable. So we will still probably be looking at tuition fees coming back and the cost of textbooks still rising. So how do students cope with the cost of these books? Oftentimes, they'll purchase an older edition of the textbook, which can be a problem with pagination in the class or certain parts of the book not being up to date or not being used. They often delay purchasing the textbook. And we all know that in classes, the longer a student takes to engage in the course and start doing well in the course, the less chance there is of successfully completing the course. Sometimes the students simply just never purchase the textbook, and at times will just try to get by the course as best they can. Of course, this sets up a lot of issues with possible failure in the class as well. Sometimes they'll share the textbooks with other students. Of course, the problem with this is that if they have a test or need to review at the same time, there's only one book to go around. So sometimes they'll download textbooks from the internet, or they'll be able to try to get them through library sharing or something of that nature, but it still doesn't give the student necessarily the exact edition that is being used in the classroom by the instructor. So students were asked, what is your biggest cost challenge as a student? And so as you can see here, tuition was the highest at 61, and then the course materials came in second. So only behind tuition is, tuition is the only thing that creates more worry, more challenges for students other than course materials themselves. So this is a video, and unfortunately I can't share it with you right now, but this is a video of a student who is talking about the fact that he has shared textbooks with 3 other students. They've tried to divide the cost. Some of them are his roommates, but the most interesting thing he says out of this video is he talks about the fact that textbooks and materials are like having a second tuition. And so at first you're looking at the tuition cost overall for the class, but then there's this huge expense added on top of that that becomes almost a second tuition in order to be able to access the actual course materials themselves. So this is why things such as inclusion programs and OER are especially important, so that we can help alleviate this aspect or this problem of having kind of a second tuition on top of the expenses already. Students were also asked, in your academic career, has the cost of required textbooks caused you to, and then we have the list going on here. And of course, the highest one is the cost means they just don't purchase the required textbook. And logic obviously suggests that if they don't have the textbook for a class and the textbook is being used, they're not going to be able to properly prepare for the course. For many of them, almost half, the cost of textbooks means that they take fewer courses in a semester. And of course, taking fewer courses means that they will be have to spread out their education over multiple semesters, more time, more tuition in the long run, and life happens. A lot more life can happen when students are having to push through for a 2-year degree over 5 years than if they could try to get it done in 2 to 2.5 years. For some of them, they simply won't register for a specific course. They're able to look up a course and see which books are required for it based upon the cost, or if a lot of books are actually being used. They simply won't register for the course. And this can be a big problem in some courses where multiple textbooks are used, but only certain chapters are used out of each book. None of the books actually have the entirety of the book being used in it. So this is another way, as will be discussed later, where using OER, you can kind of put together specific information and use the entire book itself. And of course, for some of them, we have the success issues. They earned a poor grade, they had to drop from a course, withdraw from a course, or simply fail the course. And then GTC students were asked a little bit about this as well, for how much did they spend on textbooks, and with that money, what could they have done? And you can see that some of them, it's a computer or paid on the tuition is a big one. Food is another big one. I believe my favorite on that list has to be the so many tacos. But you can see that a lot of times the cost of textbooks, when having to put that against food insecurity or being able to pay tuition itself, makes a huge difference in these students' lives. So looking here as far as how this system kind of works, traditionally you have a textbook and then you have a publisher that distributes the textbook, and then that textbook goes out to the students. The students then pay for the book, and that money goes back to the publisher, who gives the author some royalty fees for it. So here you would have the college and university puts out the textbook, which goes to the students. The college and university could give a stipend or a course release or something of that nature to the author of it. Money is coming into the college and university rather from the students through foundations, government, and certain consortia. These are some examples of a couple of books of OER text that can be found by looking through the open textbooks and other sites. And as you can see, they are not just all purely introductory type of text. You have books that can be created that are very specific for any level course that one might want to use these for. Here's an example of a biology book, and Clemson University was actually doing this one at one point. So the cost of this of a print book in the open textbook is $52. So that is sometimes an option for students. If students have trouble looking at textbooks digitally only, there are a lot of these groups that provide print copies for a much lower cost. Now, as you can see, the cost of a digital copy is absolutely zero. And this is what, for example, I've used in some of my classes, is I put these textbooks in the class, and they don't have to pay anything for the books. I then put PDFs there, and they can print out the PDFs if they want to at their own cost, but it would certainly still be cheaper than buying a full textbook. As you can see, the cost of a new print book in a traditional format is $183. So even if they would be paying for a print copy of this book, certainly $52 is a much easier access point than $183. It's even more profound when you look at digital materials. So the cost of a new digital book traditionally, when this book would be $109.99 versus a cost of absolutely zero. And so there are lots of places to go and look for these. OpenStax happens to be one of them, but you can see that for pretty much whatever subject you're doing, there should be some open textbooks out there. Again, there are multiple sites that you can use. OpenStax is one of the biggest ones, and there's books available in math, science, social sciences, the humanities, even for AP. So you could look at, even if you had dual classes and things of that nature, you could look at some OER materials. And of course, I or Michelle, the library, there's an entire LibGuide on that, and we can be happy to try to help you find materials. Here's another instance. This is all legal education. So even in very specific programs such as paralegal, there are books that can be used through OER and the Creative Commons license to find materials for students to use. And these are an extreme difference in the price to students and to the school. So again, when we look at this model, you can see that in the traditional setting on the left-hand side, it's the publisher that is really benefiting from this, that these are the rewards that are coming through. The money goes mainly to the publisher. Whereas, as you can see, the students on the OER side, on the right-hand side, they are not having to shell out all that money to a publisher. And in fact, they're still being able to get excellent materials, be able to get current materials for the courses, materials that are dedicated to that course. And so the access issue is helped tremendously. Oftentimes what you'll see here is that the copyright, there's a block here on the copyright from the textbook and then to the students, whereas later on you will see that the Creative Commons license helps with OER materials. And to talk a little bit more about that, I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle.
Sure, thanks. So, of course, copyright law is extremely important, but it wasn't intended to help people who want to share their materials. We need a license to let people know it's okay to share the work, hence the Creative Commons. And sorry, Chuck, I have just lost slide sharing capabilities. Thank you. The Creative Commons works alongside copyright for those who want to legally share their rights. It is a nonprofit, and their main job is to create licenses for those who want to share their intellectual property. So you have shared rights and you have permissions, which we'll talk about in a moment. Next slide, please. So with Creative Commons licenses, you are free to copy, mix, share, keep, use, edit. So this is just a different way of saying that you can share. The Creative Commons license is a public copyright license that is used when the author wants to give people the right to share, use, and build upon a work that they have created. Creative Commons provides an author flexibility. For example, they might choose to allow only non-commercial uses of their work and protects the people who use or redistribute an author's work from concerns of copyright infringement, as long as they abide by the conditions that are specified in the license by which the author distributes the work. There are several types of Creative Commons licenses, and they differ by several combinations or conditions. So the first that we see here, it says by, means you can reuse however you want, even commercially. You just have to give credit to whoever created it. That's what we want to do, right? We want to give credit where credit is due. The SA license means share alike. So all new works based on yours will share the same license. And this is the license used by Wikipedia. ND means no derivatives, so no changes may be made. And NC means that users can remix, tweak, build upon the work, giving the creator credit. It just cannot be used commercially. Next slide, please. So when we talk about these materials, we are talking about freely available materials, library licensed resources, reserves, and e-reserves. But just keep in mind that if you are looking for materials and you don't see a Creative Commons license, it probably is not open. If you are ever uncertain, please contact the library and we can help you figure it out. Next slide, please. So now that you know what these licenses are, you will notice that they are used all over the internet. This is a screenshot from an MIT OpenCourseware page. There was a video above where the screenshot cuts off, but please note the license. MIT wants you to use it, and their terms are by NC SA, which means non-commercial use only, and all new works based on yours will carry that same license. Next slide, please. So here is a TED Talk, and it is by NCND, which means you can reuse it, but no changes can be made, and it cannot be used commercially. And Chuck, I will hand it over to you now.
All right, so two of the main challenges or the main concerns that come about from faculty when thinking about using OER materials, one is the time commitment. And yes, there's certainly a time commitment in order to be able to find materials, look through them all, sometimes even put them together and that kind of thing. So a good time to do it is now that we're moving to Ultra, to be able to do some of the course redesigns this would be a good time to include those. And also think, though, that most departments, when we're looking at even new textbooks and we're on a textbook search committee, there's a pretty hefty time commitment in there as well. So that same kind of time can be spent with OER. And of course, there's some help to do it. There are some great library resources that Michelle will talk about in a few minutes in order to help you with that as well. The second concern that usually comes up is quality. And so, yes, absolutely. OER in the beginning had a little bit of question when it came to some of the quality of the materials. However, it has been in such use now for so long, and we have so many excellent groups that put these courses and these books together, that there are a lot of high quality materials out there that are just as good as what you would find in a traditional publisher. So one example here is the college physics book that you see on the screen here. And this is an introductory algebra-based 2-semester college physics books. It's 1,272 pages. And look at the different accessibility. It's in PDF. You can get a print copy. You can simply view it on the web. It's Bookshare accessible, that kind of thing. This book itself actually has different student resources. So I know that a lot of people like going to traditional publishers because of the ancillary materials that you can get. OER, a lot of OER materials have the same type of thing. So for students, this book would come with a student guide and a solution guide and some trailers and a TA study, things that would kind of help them. Sometimes there are even tutors that can be accessed. So there's a whole slate of student resources that would go along with this book. There's also a bunch of instructor resources. So again, this is something that oftentimes we look to traditional publishers to kind of put together for us, but OER materials can have this as well, where you can have PowerPoint slides for lectures and language that you might include in a syllabus. And now that we are trying to match course and course objectives and program objectives and that kind of thing together, this would help with that syllabus language. There's an instructor manual that has solutions in here, so that, you know, when you're looking for answer banks and things of that nature. And then there are different materials depending on the LMS service that the book may go along with. So there are still, you know, there are a lot of resources for both students and instructors. Thirdly, a lot of times we look for third-party resources. And so here's a list of different third-party resources that can be accessed along with OER materials as well. And so a lot of these you can look through depending, you know, one might work better for one subject than another, but there are plenty of really good resources for students, for instructors, and for third parties from third parties out there, to where we don't really have to worry as much about the quality of work or the depth of the materials being provided as we used to. So for many OER materials, those materials are going to be just as robust as what you would find from a traditional publisher. And I believe with that, we're going to turn it over to Michelle to talk about specifically what we can try to do here at Greenville Tech.
So to help you search for OERs, we have created a research guide, and you can find that URL here. Again, if you ever have questions or would like to walk through this with a librarian, we are happy to spend sessions with you. I have been doing this for the past couple semesters. I'll meet with a faculty member either in person or via Zoom, and it really has only taken us in the past for each session about an hour. We look through collections together, we find materials for the faculty member to evaluate, and then they can either revisit with another session or move forward with their implementation. Next slide, please. A good place to begin is the Open Textbook Library, which is included on that research guide. It is one of the most comprehensive catalogs of open textbooks. It also includes faculty reviews for about 2/3 of the textbooks in the collection, with both books and reviews being continuously added. Next slide, please. Faculty frequently ask about quality. So here's an example of a review from the Open Textbook Library. They focused on honest reviews, not seeking quote unquote good reviews. So even if a text doesn't live up to the expectations, an honest review will tell faculty where things can be improved. Next slide, please. So here we see the results of a large-scale study regarding the impact of course-level faculty adoption of open educational resources. And notice that while OER helped all students, it had a disproportionately significant impact on Pell-eligible students. And the delta DFW means a change in drop, fail, or withdrawal. Next slide, please. So let's come back to our purpose. We just spent time talking about improving access for those students who have limited financial resources. Next slide, please. But there are also groups of students who are not succeeding for reasons that are beyond financial. First-generation college students have a much higher dropout rate. Why? Because oftentimes these students feel that they don't belong. They don't have the support structures in place or the norms of going to college or familiarity with that culture because their family did not go to college. A story that I tell folks is I am a first-generation college student, and while I was a freshman, I saw the word paradigm on another student's t-shirt. I had never said this word out loud. It wasn't part of normal discourse in my family. I'd only read the word in texts. So I asked the student, what do you mean by paradigm? And some students laughed. And I don't think they were laughing at me, but still that made me feel wildly insecure and underprepared in comparison to my peers. Next slide, please. So students who are most at risk of dropping out need to see themselves as belonging in the school. These students sometimes feel like an imposter, and even small barriers can cause them to leave school. So let's talk about some ways that we can use open textbooks as pedagogical tools. Next slide, please. So they can be customized in various ways to meet the specific needs of your students. In this example, a faculty member teaching statistics discovered that there was a difference between the concepts and how they are applied in Excel. So she and her colleagues adapted this book. The faculty member found out that translating the concepts to practice was a barrier. So the revised book uses examples with Excel baked right in and found that it worked significantly better for their students. So we're not saying that you have to create an entire textbook, but you can find tools that work better with your specific student population. And a number of our open educational resources collections have a specification of 2-year associates or community college library that you can use to narrow down the resources you find. And Chuck, I will send it back to you.
All right, so as we start to get to the end here, the question that we ask is, okay, well, what can we do, right? So we've gone through this. How can we try to put this in action? First off, take a look. Just go out there and look at all the different materials that are out there. If you're interested in this, go ahead and look through materials. Go ahead and look through the LibGuide, talk to the librarians we have, just see what is actually out there, because it might surprise you. If you do find something, even whether or not you choose to adopt it, write a review for it. Obviously, the better reviews and the more reviews that we have on these materials from different subjects, the better they can be edited, the better materials that we can put out there that we have available for our students. And of course, go ahead and try to adopt a book or a set of materials if it meets the needs of you and your students. And of course, we would never want you to just do OER for the sake of doing OER. We never want you to just do OER just so that it doesn't cost the student money. We need to make sure that it actually meets the needs of you as an instructor, the students, and the course itself. However, there are a lot of those things out there that we truly believe would meet those needs. And then, of course, once you find that, if you get excited about it, raise awareness over it. Talk with your colleagues in your programming department. Go to department meetings or textbook committee meetings and talk about possibly approving or adopting something like this for an entire course in your department or whatever. I will let you know that our English 102, as of fall of this year, just went to an OER. We adopted OER for the entire course. So students don't need to buy anything for English 102, whereas it used to cost them anywhere from, I believe that book was around $84. So, you know, that is something that we're hoping to look at in this department, but it's something that can be done for almost any department across Greenville Technical College. We would definitely encourage you to look into the possibility of using OER in your classes. And Michelle? So I'm not sure if Michelle's mic went out or whatever, but just to kind of finish this idea up, once you do that, if you're going to write a review, yes, if you find something like, especially from the open textbook library that fits your class or your expertise, you can get an email with a link to an online review form. You can certainly complete a review, and then that review will be posted on the open textbook library under an open license. You probably, if you recall the slide from a few slides back that had the ratings scale on there, your reviews would contribute to that type of thing. And open textbook library isn't the only place that you can do that with. There are other places you can do that as well. So if you're interested in writing a review, feel free to get in touch with one of us to help you out with that.
All right. And with that, I will just say, here is a link to the Open Textbook Library. And here we are giving credit to the person who created this slide presentation. So again, yes, please get in touch with us if you have any questions, and otherwise, thank you for listening.